Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 37, For the Clan. The death of High God Sadista didn't cause much of a stir in the Yulon plain. The ordinary people continued living their quiet lives. Only the deities who stood at the top of the plain had learned something from that terrifying energy wave which had come from the west. Something major was happening within the Yulon continent. Anras died. Sadista headed towards the west and didn't return either. Within the Rohalt Empire, Sadista's group of deities now naturally became led by Sadista's nephew Dani, as well as the other god, Nyef and Ifu. Dani and Nyef, however, couldn't be completely certain of Sadista's death. Today, they felt very frantic. Within the Rohalt Empire, that quiet, secluded manor, the blazing summer sun shone down upon the entire manor. Within Dani's residence, a man with short silver hair, a sunken, skinny body, and a short-sleeved black shirt strode forward. "Dani, come out." The door swung open and Dani walked out. "Nyef, what is it? How can you be in a mood to rest?" Nyef was somewhat angry. "Tell me, what can I do?" Dani was extremely frustrated as well. It was he who had advised Sadista to go kill those two gods to go vent his anger. After all, if Sadista spent all his time brooding, Dani would have felt miserable and stifled as well. But who would have imagined that his uncle, Sadista, would leave and never return? 3 days ago, there was that astonishing energy wave from the west. You sensed it as well? Nyef said seriously. Dani nodded. Yes. I sensed it. That was indeed Uncle's aura. But Nyef, what can that prove? What can that prove? Nyef laughed. Dani, quit dreaming. The situation is clear. That powerful energy wave is something which I trust Lord Sadista would not have released for no reason. He must have engaged in a major battle. Nyef continued, that day, you told me that Lord Sadista went to the west to kill those two gods. Are those two gods dead yet? Dani started. Hesitating a moment, he said, I don't know. You don't know? It's simple. Spread out your divine aura to cover that mountain range. I trust you will easily be able to judge for yourself if those two gods are dead or not. Nyef said coldly. Dani. Stop playing the role of a fool. Dani's face changed. I've checked with my divine sense. Nyef took a deep breath. Those two gods didn't die. Dani. Lord Sadista went to kill those two gods. Such a major event occurred over there, but those two gods didn't die. Lord Sadista has been gone for 3 days without coming back. Can it be that the result isn't clear? Perhaps, Uncle had some important business to attend to, so he had to go somewhere. Dani said in an pained manner. Dani didn't want to believe that his uncle had died. Their clan was an enormous one which existed for 10 trillion years. Naturally, it was divided into the main clan and the branch clans. In Dani's branch, Sadista was the pillar and foundation of the entire branch clan. If Sadista truly had died, Dani could imagine what dire straits his clan would be in. Nyef understood what Dani was thinking as well. Dani, no matter what, we have to face reality. Nyef said seriously. This is the Yulon continent, not the infernal realm. In the Yulon continent, even if Lord Sadista met with something important and can't spare any attention to anything else, he would have contacted us with his divine sense. A divine sense communication only takes an instant, after all. However, he hasn't. We haven't received any communication from Lord Sadista. Nyef's face was grave. I don't want to admit it, but I have to say this. The plans of the clan have failed. The necropolis of the gods, at least our group has no hope for it. Without the power of a high god, we simply won't be able to obtain the treasures which the clan needs. Dani nodded as well. How could he not understand this point? Uncle, perhaps truly has died. Dani nodded bitterly, but then he stared at Nyev. But Nyev, so what if Uncle has died? Can it be that you? Right. Nyev's aura grew fierce. Danny, the status which the clan has is a result of countless elders who risked their lives over the past 10 trillion years. You and I are not very talented. Why is it then that we were able to receive divine sparks and easily reach the rank of gods as descendants of the clan? It was the clan who gave us everything. Danny was silent. The Indigo Prefecture is our greatest foe. They are too powerful. The 4 divine beast clans of the Indigo Prefecture are extremely powerful. That Linley, you should know as well that in less than a century, he has trained to the level of having 2 divine clones. Nyev laughed coldly. I have never heard of such a talented genius amongst the 4 divine beast clans, who could reach this sort of level without engaging in their baptism. And Danny, that Linley trains in earth and wind, not water. Do you understand what that means? Danny nodded. As soon as he undergoes the ancestral baptism of the 4 divine beasts, I believe that 10,000 years later, the Indigo Prefecture will definitely have yet another high god of unsurpassed power. When that happens, I don't even dare imagine how many members of our clan will die by his hands. Nyev's gaze was sharp. But right now, he is only a demigod who has yet to undergo the ancestral baptism of the 4 divine beasts. If we don't kill him now, when will we kill him? Nyev's gaze was cold and fierce. I know that in the Yulan continent, Linley has some supporters and connections, but so what if he does? I would rather let myself die if it means killing him. Nyev had relied on using a divine spark to become a god. He knew. Although he was currently more powerful than Linley, in terms of potential, he was far inferior to Linley. Nyev. Danny took a deep breath, shaking his head. I recommend you not go and attempt to kill Linley right now. What did you say? Nyev exploded with rage. Danny sighed and said, don't be hasty. There really is no need for us to kill him here in the Yulan plain. Once he goes to the infernal realm, we can kill him then. What a joke. Nyev said. First of all, when will Linley go to the infernal realm? What if he stays in the Yulan plain until he reaches the level of high god, and then acquires a sovereign artifact in the necropolis of the gods, and only then goes to the infernal realm? If we want to kill him then, would we be able to? Danny was stunned. Also, once Linley reaches the infernal realm, there's no way for us to be certain which transit location he will be sent to. Our clan is only influential in that area where we have power over. Do you really believe we can pursue him across the entire infernal realm? Do you know how vast the infernal realm is? Nyev stared at Danny. There was nothing Danny could say. Previously, Sadista's primary goal was the necropolis of the gods, which was why he temporarily put aside killing Linley. In truth, killing Linley in the infernal realm wasn't very practical. As one of the higher planes, the infernal realm's size vastly outstretched the Yulan plane by countless times. Within the infernal realm, there also quite a few forces which were more powerful than both their clan as well as the Indigo Prefecture. Danny, can it be that you have forgotten those countless major battles we have had against the Indigo Prefecture? The figures of those elders who died, one after the other. Nyev stared at Danny. Enough. I'm immediately heading off for the mountain range of magical beasts. I know that this time even if I am able to kill Linley, I might be killed by his supporters in revenge. But if I can kill Linley, I will die content. Danny, I leave everything here in your hands. I'm leaving. Nyev turned and left. Since they couldn't acquire the treasures of the necropolis of the gods, if they could at least kill Linley, this trip would not have been completely in vain. Danny didn't want to watch Nyev go die. If he killed Linley, Nyev would be killed in revenge by those forces who supported Linley. For Rainales lay Neiersi. Nyev sent back with his mental message, and then Nyev himself flew into midair, streaking towards the western horizons, transforming into a black dot. Danny was stunned, but then his gaze grew hard and resolved. In a soft voice, he said, "For rain ales. Attend me." Danny shouted towards the outside, and soon, a demigod came over. Danny gave him a long list of instructions, and then said, "Remember, you must provide this information to Lord Hodan. You can go now." "Yes, milord." The demigod immediately flew out of this residence, heading directly towards the Arctic ice cap. Within the mountain range of magical beasts, in a half-shattered canyon where wild grass grew abundantly and where spring water flowed, the figures of Thunderwing Pegasi, magical beasts of the 7th rank, could be seen everywhere. The Thunderwing Pegasi all displayed leisurely elegance, occasionally flying into the air and then landing by the side of the springs, lowering their heads to drink water. Suddenly, a human figure appeared here, causing the many Thunderwing Pegasi to be so terrified, they didn't dare to move. Time to do what must be done. The short silver-haired Nyafe looked around, then sent his divine sense into the minds of every Thunderwing Pegasus before he then sat down in the meditative stance. At the same time, he spread out his divine sense. Nyafe restrained the area of his divine sense to just the mountain range of magical beasts. The height of his divine sense was limited to just 10 or so kilometers. This sort of scale represented less than 0.1% of the Yulon continent's total size. The amount of spiritual energy it consumed to keep a divine sense active in this region, to a god like Nyafe, was completely sustainable. At the very least, he was able to replenish whatever he used up. Linley is still there. If he returns to Dragonblood Castle, he will have to fly through the mountain range of magical beasts. Once he does, I will discover him. Nyafe didn't think any longer, and just waited here for the hare to step into the trap. Nyafe didn't dare to directly attack Mount Copper Gong. After all, Anraz and Sadista had both failed. He waited here in ambush, and would thus have a much higher chance. Linley quietly trained at Mount Copper Gong. Receiving guidance from one of the 5 kings, Bluefire Leyland, was a rare opportunity. In addition, Linley also knew that Bluefire Leyland wouldn't stay too long here at Mount Copper Gong. He would eventually leave. Linley, the profound mysteries of the essence of the earth is a simple type of mystery. If you focus on training in it, you will succeed within 1 or 2 years. Leyland laughed calmly. But, if you wait until completely mastering the profound mysteries of the essence of the earth before attempting to fuse it with the throbbing pulse of the world, you will most likely spend thousands or 10,000 years without being successful. Fusing is far more difficult than simply understanding a profound mystery. Leyland said solemnly. Linley nodded slightly. Thus, the best method is, to begin attempting to fuse your insights regarding the essence of the earth right away into your other insights. Don't try to completely master the entire essence of the earth as soon as possible. What matters more is the degree to which you are able to fuse it, and to make the degree of your insights match with your degree of fusion. Leyland laughed, perhaps in such a way, it will take decades or a century for you to master the essence of the earth. But by doing so, as soon as you achieve mastery in the essence of the earth, you will also have completed your fusion of the essence of the earth and the throbbing pulse of the world. I understand this principle. Linley had, after all, the prior experience of fusing the fast and slow aspects of the elemental laws of the wind. To fuse while gaining insights was actually much simpler. But if one had reached mastery in both profound mysteries and then attempt to fuse them, it would be very hard. If he waited until all of his profound mysteries had become mastered before attempting to fuse them, the insights he had gained into the various profound mysteries would clash with each other, causing the fusion difficulty to be even greater. Linley's training in Mount Copper Gong lasted for another 3 years. Within these 3 years, although his level of attainment in the essence of the earth remained at the level he had reached 3 years ago, Linley had finally started the first step towards fusing the throbbing pulse of the world and the essence of the earth. Many people weren't even capable of taking the first step towards fusing these two profound mysteries. The first step was the key, the most important part. With a beginning, there would be chance for success. The power level after fusing truly is formidable. Although Linley had only fused just a little bit, he discovered that his Void Wave sword had increased in power by 50% despite only using the same amount of spiritual energy as before. And this is just the beginning. I can't imagine how much more powerful my Void Wave sword will become after I completely master these two profound mysteries. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 38, Attacked on the Way Back. Seated in the meditative stance on the ground, Linley could easily sense how the vast, boundless world was filled with earth elemental essence. Every single particle of it was so friendly and familiar to him. With Linley at the center, a surge of pulsating power was throbbing out towards every direction. Duong! Duong! Each surge of pulsating power which emanated outwards was filled with natural earth elemental essence. They rolled out like waves, interacting with each other while fusing with pulsating power. Throbbing pulse of the world. Essence of the earth. Linley was focusing on slowly fusing these two profound mysteries. Linley, who had been in the middle of his meditations, was suddenly interrupted by a divine sense. Linley instantly knew that it was Delia who had contacted him. An unconscious smile appeared on Linley's face. Delia, what is it? Do you miss me? Humph, who misses you? Delia let out a cute humph. Linley, I want to ask you, how long do you plan to train there on Mount Copper Gong? Linley couldn't help but be startled. Delia's voice contained a hint of displeasure. Naturally, Linley could detect it. Only now did Linley realize that he had gone a bit too far. I left Dragon Blood Castle in year 10,066, but this is now year 10,072. It's been almost 6 years. I haven't gone back a single time. When he was training, he truly didn't notice how fast the time went by. It felt like those years had passed in an instant. 6 years. I can't blame Delia for being unhappy. Linley felt that he was in the wrong here. Linley, aren't you training? You can train in Dragon Blood Castle as well. Delia now persuaded using gentler words. All right. Delia, I'll come back tomorrow. Linley said immediately, and then added an apologetic message, Delia, I'm sorry. I'm not angry. Oh, did you say tomorrow? Delia was both surprised and delighted. I'll immediately order the servants to prepare a banquet for tomorrow. Right, Linley, when will you arrive at Dragon Blood Castle? Around noon, or at night? I'll arrive before noon. Linley was certain of this. Actually, ever since he had started fusing the essence of the earth with the throbbing pulse of the world, Lord Bluefire, i.e. Leyland, no longer needed to give Linley any more pointers. Thus, staying on Mount Copper Gong was no longer of much benefit to Linley anyways. Within the elemental mansion in Mount Copper Gong. Whoosh! The wild mountain wind howled, and the grass and flowers in front of the door to the mansion swayed. However, the wind wasn't able to budge those several large trees there. The Lord of Mount Copper Gong, a king of the Gebados Planar Prison, Lord Bluefire, was currently there with his two brothers, sending Linley and BB off. Linley, even if you didn't go back, very soon, I would be sending you off. Bluefire Leyland said amusedly. Haha, the main issue is that very soon, I will go with my elder brother and second brother. We will depart from Mount Copper Gong, and also leave the Yulan continent. Linley knew long ago that Leyland was going to leave. Mr. Leyland, where are you going? BB asked with curiosity. I'm not sure for right now. Leyland let out a long sigh. Perhaps I will pay a visit to the South Seas. That place used to be my homeland. Unfortunately, the passage of countless years has resulted in the continent where my homeland was located to sink into the endless seas long ago. That battle of 10,000 years ago had caused the other 4 continents to all be shattered and collapse. Mr. Leyland, if you have the time, you can pay a visit to my Dragon Blood Castle. I will welcome you whenever you come." Linley and Bibi had said their words of thanks long ago. After bidding farewell to Leyland and the other two, Linley and Bibi immediately left Mount Copper Gong and flew towards Dragon Blood Castle. After not having returned for 6 years, Linley now had a deep desire to return. The mountain range of magical beasts. In the gorge beneath the shattered cliffs. A place where there were few traces of civilization. In the past, this was a paradise for magical beasts, but ever since 3 years ago, no magical beasts dared to go near this place. By the side of the spring waters, within a patch of wild grass, there was a faint human figure that could be seen. It was the god from the infernal realm, Nyev. Despite waiting for 3 years, Nyev had never relaxed his vigilance. His divine sense was eternally activated, covering this region as he waited quietly for Linley. This Linley will definitely go back to Dragon Blood Castle eventually. As long as he passes through the mountain range of magical beasts en route to the Dragon Blood Castle, he definitely will not escape. Nyev arose, a black spotted spear appearing in his hands as he began to roam about the valley. After all, having not encountered Linley despite 3 years of waiting, Nyev also couldn't be certain as to when Linley would appear. He couldn't waste all of his time waiting foolishly. Only, Nyev didn't realize that someone else was hidden deep within this gorge. This Nyev's divine sense is very average amongst gods. But he trains in the elemental laws of the wind. In terms of speed, he is even faster than Linley. If Linley really does encounter him, it would most likely really be a bit dangerous. The indistinct figure stared at the distant Nyev. Nyev was currently transformed into a gust of wind, and his spear blurred as it silently pierced through the empty air time and time again. However, danger is good. The blurred figure disappeared silently without a trace. Nyev had come to a halt in his training, continuing to sit in the meditative position. But suddenly, he opened his eyes, staring towards mid-air with a dagger-like gaze. It is him. Linley. Nyev's eyes were filled with a hint of wild joy. He couldn't help but begin to laugh loudly and excitedly. After waiting 3 years, he's finally come. In truth, Nyev was still hundreds of kilometers away from Linley. Naturally, despite how loudly Nyev had cried out, Linley wasn't able to hear him. "For rain ales, if I die, it will be worth it," Nyev said in a low voice, his eyes filled with unmatched ardor. Silently, Nyev transformed into a puff of smoke, transforming into the formless wind. This surge of wind flew at astonishing speed in pursuit of Linley. His speed was so great that it was much faster than Linley's current absolute limit. Nyev was a full god. After fusing with the divine spark, he had gained insight into 3 of the elemental laws within it. He was particularly proficient in fast movements. I didn't expect he would be so fast. It seems I need to focus. Seconds after Nyev had flown out, a ray of light flashed out of the gorge as well, following Nyev in pursuit. In terms of speed, this ray of light surpassed Nyev. Linley and Bibi were currently chatting and laughing en route to Dragon Blood Castle, not sensing at all the god-level divine sense which had encompassed them. If they knew that a god was in pursuit of them, perhaps Linley and Bibi would have raised their speed to the utmost limit to return to Dragon Blood Castle. But unfortunately, they didn't know. "Boss. Do you think Leyland and the others will go to the infernal realm?" "Who knows? However, given Mr. Leyland's power, no matter which plane he goes to, he will be an ultimate expert." Ever since Linley had witnessed Blue Fire Leyland killing the seemingly powerful Sadista in a single blow, Linley had been certain that Blue Fire was one of the ultimate experts amongst high gods. Huh? Bibi suddenly frowned. "What is it?" Linley asked, puzzled. "I feel something is off." Bibi trained in the laws of darkness. He was only a demigod, but he trained in the exact same stealth skills which Caesar trained in. He was extremely sensitive to the auras of others. Bibi suddenly turned his head, then said in shock, "Boss, quick, run." Linley turned his head. Within a realm of distorted space, a blurry human figure had appeared within his field of vision, staring at him with a pair of cold eyes. It was the god, Nyef. "You want to flee?" Nyef let out a cold laugh, immediately executing his godrealm. Just like last time when Anras had attacked him, Linley felt as though he had sunken into a quagmire. Not hesitating at all, Linley hurriedly creates both of his demigod-level godrealm. Boom! The sky-blue robes covering his body exploded, and azure golden scales covered Linley's entire body. From his forehead and spine, one sharp spike after another emerged. Linley's speed once again rose. Transforming into a ray of light, he flew at high speed towards Dragonblood Castle, fleeing. Since he was unable to discover this person was at least a god. Not good. As he attempted to flee, Linley discovered that in terms of speed, the person behind him was far faster than Anras had been. Actually, Anras' god-level divine clone was of fire type. His wind-style divine clone was of the demigod level. That was why he didn't have an advantage in speed. But Nyef was different. Linley. A human figure appeared in front of Linley. It was Nyef. Linley immediately came to a halt, and Nyef laughed coldly. "You aren't able to flee." The strange thing was, these words came from every direction. Linley turned. Currently, surrounding Linley and Bibi, there were 12 figures, all of them that of Nyef. The 12 Nyefs had completely surrounded Linley and Bibi. What is this?" Linley was shocked. "These definitely aren't divine clones. There are 7 types of elemental laws, even if you include the 4 edicts, that's only 11. Even if a person mastered all 11, he would at most have 11 divine clones. But these 12 people before me have the exact same aura. Boss, one of them definitely is the real body." Bibi looked around frantically as well. Linley understood this as well, but he couldn't tell anything different about these 12 figures. The 12 Nyefs surrounded Linley and Bibi. Die! The 12 Nyefs revealed a hint of madness in their eyes, and instantly, they swept towards the two from every direction. The strange thing was, the 12 figures completely ignored Bibi. Their target was Linley. From all 8 directions, and from above and below. There was no place for Linley to flee. Which is the real one? Linley thought frantically, but he still had a hint of confidence. This confidence came from his throbbing pulse of the world, Void Wave Sword, as well as his damaged sovereign artifact. With the defense of his damaged sovereign artifact, his chances of survival would be very high. The 12 all attacked together. A strange violet flash lit up, and countless sword shadows shot out in every direction like the petals of a flower unfolding. It was the profound truths of velocity, rippling wind. Although there were many sword shadows, the power of each sword wasn't that great. With a series of collision sounds ringing out, none of the 12 Nyefs seemed to be harmed at all. Linley's face instantly changed. He had thought that the 11 fake bodies amongst the 12 would be damaged. But who would have imagined that the 12 bodies were all so powerful? 12 sets of cold eyes stared at Linley, as though staring at a dead man. Boom! 12 shadows slashed through the sky like warblades, attacking Linley. Only choice is to go all out. Linley didn't have any time to care about anything else. The adamantine heavy sword in his hand began to dance. If he wasn't certain which one was the real body, then his only option was to randomly attack one. Boss. Bibi, frantic, also stopped caring about anything else. He raised his head and let out a shrill screech. Scree! The ear-piercing screech split the skies, while at the same time, Bibi transformed into his Godator rat form, and behind him, an illusory Godator rat that was hundreds of meters tall appeared. Innate divine ability, Godator. With one breath, Bibi locked all 12 bodies, trying to devour all 12 of them. However, BB's current God Eater ability was only effective against demigods. Nyef, a god, could not be devoured by BB at all. The 12 bodies all halted briefly, but an instantly later, they became no longer influenced. If the devour failed, there would be a counter-force. Boom! A large mouthful of blood was spat out from BB's mouth, while at the same time, wildly overjoyed, he messaged mentally to Linley, "Boss, the real body is that one." In that instant, BB utilized his spiritual connection with Linley to point out the real location of Nyef's body to Linley. BB had used his innate divine ability just now not for the sake of killing Nyef, but to locate the divine spark. His divine ability involved the devouring of divine sparks, after all. Once BB utilized it, he was able to sense which of the 12 bodies had a divine spark within it. Only the body with the divine spark was the real one. The others were all false. Linley, wielding his adamantine heavy sword, transformed into a straight moving blur, chopping down directly towards the Nyef on his left. This was Nyef's true body. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 39, Drawing Legs on a Snake. Nyef's 12 bodies were originally using their legs to attack, and hadn't used any divine artifacts, because Nyef didn't want to reveal his true body to Linley. However, as Linley smashed down towards his true body with his adamantine heavy sword, Nyef's true body retrieved that spotted black spear with a flip of his hand. Slash. Space distorted. Clang. The adamantine heavy sword and the spotted black spear collided, and a surge of gray-colored, illusory, sword-shaped power ignored Nyef's defense and entered Nyef's body. This was the vastly improved Void Wave sword which Linley had developed after fusing the essence of the earth and the throbbing pulse of the world. Die. At the same time Nyef controlled his spiritual energy to block the Void Wave sword, he wildly used his other bodies to attack Linley. Even if he were to die, he would kill Linley. In addition, Nyef didn't care too much about this attack of Linley's. As Nyef saw it, how powerful could Linley's spiritual attack possibly be? Most likely he just controlled and shaped a surge of spiritual energy to form this attack. However, Nyef was wrong. Countless dense pulses of spiritual energy, thrumming in accordance with the throbbing pulse of the world, formed into a whole. Rumble. The Void Wave sword's countless pulses of spiritual energy smashed directly against his spiritual defense, breaking through it as though it were nothing but rotten wood. It directly entered Nyef's sea of consciousness, violently smashing upon that divine spark which was emitting a green light. Nyef only sensed a sudden, massive vibration from his soul, and then Nyef lost all consciousness. Right at this moment, countless rays of white light suddenly appeared from everywhere, and Nyef's 12 bodies were completely bound by the rays of light, completely unable to move at all. Naturally, he was also no longer able to attack Linley at all. Ha ha, Linley. Gentle laughter rang out. A handsome youth appeared before Linley and BB. Lord Atkins. Linley was somewhat surprised. Why had this Atkins suddenly appeared? However, Linley still said gratefully, "Thank you for your assistance, Lord Atkins." Atkins felt a hint of delight in his heart. Ever since that day when he had spread out his divine sense to sweep through the Rohalt Empire and accidentally stumbled upon Danny speaking with a subordinate and discussing the plot for Nyef to kill Linley, Atkins had been prepared. He had even intentionally hidden himself within the gorge by Nyef's side. The reason he did this was primarily to intentionally have the chance to save Linley, so as to make Linley and BB feel grateful towards him. Making friends with BB was a very important task, in Atkins' mind. Since Lord Bluefire had arrived at the Yulon continent, if he, Atkins, still wanted to obtain any of the treasures of the necropolis of the gods, his only chance was to ally with Beirut. "I was just passing by, but I discovered," Atkins was all smiles, but halfway through his words, Lord Atkins' voice suddenly came to a halt. He had discovered that 11 of the 12 bodies of this god, Nyef, had already crumbled and dissipated, transforming into wind elemental essence and dispersing. As for Nyaf's true body, he lay there limply, not resisting his binding at all. The muscles on Adkin's face began to twitch. He now clearly discovered that Nyaf's soul in his original body had already dissipated. Only a divine spark was left. Adkins chuckled awkwardly towards Linley. Linley, I really didn't expect that you had already killed this Nyaf. Whether or not I acted really didn't make any difference. Linley's void wave sword had killed Nyaf with one blow. Nyaf's soul had dissipated, and so his other bodies had naturally dispersed as well. His original body wouldn't attack either, of course. Linley hadn't been in any danger at all. But Adkin's original plan had been to save him at the most critical moment, so as to make Linley feel all the more grateful towards him. But now he discovered that doing so was like drawing legs onto a painting of a snake, a completely pointless, superfluous action. Even if he hadn't acted, Linley wouldn't have had any problems. I still have to thank you, Lord Adkins. Linley said with a smile. As he spoke, Linley turned to look at Bibi. This time, the person who had truly saved him was Bibi. If Bibi hadn't utilized his innate divine ability and determined which of the 12 bodies was the true one, then Linley wouldn't have been able to hit the true body at all, given his original plan of randomly attacking one. If he hadn't been able to hit the true body, then in the face of the wild attack from this god, Linley's body probably would have been explosively destroyed. Boss. Bibi's face revealed a smile as well. Linley and Bibi didn't need to say anything to each other. A single glance was enough for them to understand what the other was thinking. This sort of dangerous event was something which Linley and Bibi had already experienced many times. You killed this person. Everything goes to you. Adkins directly used his power to control Nyaf's divine god spark, his interdimensional ring, and his divine artifact, sending them floating towards Linley. Linley wasn't overly polite either, he immediately absorbed it all into his own interspatial ring. Adkins had a very sour feeling in his heart. Ever since he had learned that Nyaf was planning to kill Linley, he had made preparations for this day for a long time. Just now, he had intentionally waited for the most dangerous moment before making his move. Who would have imagined that he had done all that for nothing? Lord Adkins, I'd like to ask, just now, what sort of profound mystery did that man use? Why did he have so many clones? And there was no way to separate them by aura either. Linley asked. Adkins had the intention of improving his relationship with Linley and Bibi, so naturally, he replied with great friendliness, oh, this person used a doppelganger technique belonging to the elemental laws of the wind. His divine power was rather low, and his soul wasn't very strong either. His application of this doppelganger technique wasn't very impressive. The high gods that I know are capable of instantly creating 1,000 doppelgangers. 1,000 doppelgangers. Linley was utterly stunned. That's an extreme, of course. Generally speaking, experts are capable of creating a few dozen. He had only 11. That really is rather low. Adkins said disdainfully. As I see it, he most likely fused with a divine spark to become a deity. His understanding of the laws of the wind is quite low as well. The power of his clones wasn't strong either, they are only capable of physical attacks. They are useful against some low-level people, but against experts of the same level, they are useless. Adkins suddenly chuckled. Although, it is still a good method for fleeing. Linley's eyes couldn't help but light up. The doppelgangers and the main body were identical. Others truly wouldn't be able to tell them apart. After all, there weren't many people like Bibi, capable of discerning which body had a divine spark within it. Even Bibi had paid a heavy price for doing so. Linley, I recognize this god. Adkins said voluntarily. Who is he? Why does he want to kill me? Linley hurriedly asked. Bibi listened carefully as well. Over the past few years, Linley had repeated assassination attempts on his life. Adkins said, Do you remember last time, that high god which Lord Bluefire killed? That high god was named Sadista. This person is Sadista's subordinate. Adkins had learned the name Sadista through using his divine sense to scan Sadista's manner, where he heard Danny and others chat with each other. That high god. Sadista. Linley frowned. Linley had heard Bluefire Leyland also tell him that the people who wanted to assassinate him came from the infernal realm. Well, Linley, I still have matters to attend to. I'll leave now. Adkins said with a smile. If in the future, when you have any free time, I would welcome you to visit my place at your leisure. Adkins' attitude was extremely friendly. He then transformed into a ray of light, disappearing into the horizon. Linley and Bibi exchanged a glance. That Adkins' attitude is a bit too good, isn't it? Bibi rubbed his eyes. I have a weird feeling about it. Linley looked towards the O'Brien Empire's direction. Ojwin and Linley were enemies, but Ojwin's leader, Adkins, treated Linley in such a friendly manner. Who cares why he is acting strangely? At least I can be certain that this Adkins has the intention of building a good relationship with us. Let's go. Time to go back. Linley, thinking about the god spark he had just acquired, thought to himself, it seems I have a gift to give Delia now. Nyafe had died and left behind a wind-style divine god spark, which was perfectly suited for giving to Delia. After all, Delia had become a deity through fusing with a divine spark. In the future, she would also have to continue relying upon fusing divine sparks. Just by relying on her own power, Delia would find it very hard to break through. The battle between Nyafe and Linley, especially the collapse of Nyafe's 11 doppelgangers, caused a large explosive wave of wind elemental essence to spread out, actually causing a tremor in the elemental essence of the world. This naturally attracted the attention of quite a few experts of the Yulan continent, and at this moment, quite a few divine senses were covering this area. Within the Rohald Empire, Nyafe died. Danny let out a long sigh. His divine sense had already located Linley and Bibi's figures. Nyafe failed as well. And then, Danny's face changed. Last time, Anraz attacked. This time, Nyafe attacked. Is it possible that Linley knows that Nyafe belonged to our side? If he goes to ask those gods of his residence to gain revenge upon us, or asks for Lord Beirut to act, then, Danny's heart grew nervous. There's no point to staying here at the Yulan plain any longer anyhow. Danny was certain about this. First of all, it was impossible for them to acquire the treasures of the necropolis of the gods. Secondly, it was also impossible to kill Linley. Best to immediately head back to the infernal realm. Everyone, assemble at the front courtyard. Danny immediately sent out this message. Only a few moments later, dozens of figures flew out of the Rohald Empire, heading towards the Arctic ice cap of the far north. They headed out in the morning. After flying for several hours, at roughly noontime, they arrived at the Arctic ice cap. Their speed was indeed quite fast. The Arctic ice cap. The peak of that iceberg. The wind howled. Hodan came out from within that icy residence of his. HRM. Danny. Hodan saw Danny, then shook his head and sighed. You are heading back. Danny nodded slightly. In a bitter voice, he said, our mission this time in the Yulan continent was a failure. Did Nyafe succeed in killing Linley? Hodan asked. 3 years ago, Danny had already sent someone to tell Hodan of this affair. Failed. Nyafe died as well. Danny shook his head helplessly as he spoke. If this Linley goes to the Indigo Prefecture, he will definitely pose a great threat to our Rainales clan. But even if I go back and explain this to the clan, I'm afraid it won't be viewed with much importance by the clan. Danny's position in the clan was fairly low. Anyone who fused with divine sparks to become a deity, aside from high gods, would all have fairly low status. I'm not able to get involved with the matters of the clan. Hodan sighed. Otherwise, a boring job like this wouldn't have fallen to me. Alright, I'll send you back now. The group of deities led by Danny stood in that same six-sided star-shaped magic formation. Hodan activated the magic formation, and rays of light shot towards the heavens. The space within the magic formation began to distort like an illusion. In but a short while, the dozens of figures disappeared, no longer visible. Danny and the rest of the group had immediately fled the Yulon plain and returned to the infernal realm. As for Dragon Blood Castle in the Yulon continent, it was filled with laughter and joy. Not just Tarasi and Dylan were there, the war god, the high priest, and everyone else all participated in this banquet. This was Linley's first return in 6 years, after all. In particular, after hearing about what Linley had experienced over the past few years, Tarasi, Dylan, and the others were all greatly surprised. In particular the story of how Leyland had killed that high god, Sadista, with but a single blow caused all of the experts present to stare slack-jawed. Did you just say that Leyland, the Lord of Mount Copper Gong, was Lord Bluefire? One of the 5 kings, Lord Bluefire? Dylan said in astonishment. Dylan had stayed in Gebados for a time. He knew how terrifying Bluefire was. Bibi, chewing on food as he spoke, said, even Adkins, upon seeing Mr. Leyland at Mount Copper Gong, immediately fell down to one knee and called out to him as Lord of the city. Adkins. Wharton, seated next to Linley, frowned. Wharton hated Adkins deeply, because his grandson Thrusina, little Cass, had been killed by Ojwin, while Ojwin was now Adkins' subordinate. Speaking of Adkins, I just thought of something. Linley looked at the nearby Olivier. Olivier, that Adkins has already guaranteed to me that Ojwin will never ever make trouble for you again. Oliver's eyes instantly lit up. All these years, he had remained inside Dragon Blood Castle, not daring to go outside, precisely because he was afraid of being attacked by Ojwin. Linley, thank you. Olivier felt some gratitude in his heart. If you are going to thank someone, you should thank Mr. Leyland. Linley said. Olivier then immediately said, Linley, since Ojwin won't pursue and attack me any further, then, tomorrow, I will prepare to head towards the Arctic ice cap. I really can't take it any longer. Tomorrow? Why are you going to the Arctic ice cap? Olivier smiled, his eyes holding a hint of anticipation. Tomorrow, I am preparing to head to the higher plane of the infernal realm. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 40, Creek, Ocean. Go to the infernal realm. Oliver's words caused everyone in the hall to look towards him. Linley was somewhat surprised. He said, Olivier, you are going to the infernal realm tomorrow? Why the rush? You can go to the infernal realm any time you want. In addition, the Yulon plain is going to have another opening of the necropolis of the gods in 1,000 years. Most of the experts remaining on the Yulon continent were doing so because of the necropolis of the gods. Necropolis of the gods. Olivier laughed self-mockingly. What's the point of remaining in the Yulon continent? Linley, can it be that you think that I, Olivier, will be able to compete against Adkins or against Lord Bluefire? I'm just a demigod. All I can do is watch, even if I stay behind. I might as well go to the infernal realm early. The infernal realm. Oliver's gaze drifted away, as though he was staring into the infernal realm right now. The legendary infernal realm of the higher planes, the place where countless top-tier experts of countless material planes are clustered together. A place with more experts and which is more diverse than even the planar prison by trillions of times. Everyone present, including Linley, Bibi, Delia, Tarasi, Dylan, and the war god all felt their hearts swayed. They all knew how many experts were in the planar prison. But compared to the infernal realm of the higher planes, the Gebados planar prison was nothing more than a tiny spot. After all, the infernal realm had attracted countless experts from the myriad material planes. After so many years, it was perhaps already impossible to calculate how many experts were there. Right now, it feels like the Yulon continent has quite a few experts. However, the Yulon continent is nothing more than a small creek, while the infernal realm is an ocean filled with countless dangers. Although dangerous, it also contains boundless opportunities and challenges. Oliver's eyes were shining. The infernal realm. I dream of going there. That is my stage. Nobody tried to dissuade Olivier again. Because Oliver's words caused even Linley, Tarasi, and the other experts to feel rather itchy in their hearts. Indeed, the planar prison would generally only have a few people locked within it every 10,000 years. The vast majority of experts, by contrast, traveled to the higher planes. And these were experts from the countless planes of the universe. It could be said that most likely all of the experts in the various planar prisons in the countless planes of the world, all combined, wouldn't be as many as the number of experts within the infernal realm. Creek, ocean. This echoed in Linley's mind. The Yulon continent was like a leisurely, clear creek. After Atkins, Leyland, and the others left, Linley definitely would be one of the most powerful creatures living within this creek. But if Linley were to go to the infernal realm and enter that endless sea filled with danger, the number of experts more powerful than Linley would be uncountable. That place had many people who had been training for far longer than Linley, or perhaps were even more talented than Linley, or perhaps had clans that were more terrifyingly powerful than Linley's. However, the vast infernal realm caused Linley's heart to begin to boil with heated blood. A life of challenges was what was needed for a person to be excited. Deep at night. Within the bedroom, Linley and Delia were lying on the bed. "Linley, what are you thinking about?" Delia said softly. "Me." Linley recovered from his reverie. He had just been thinking about the infernal realm of the higher planes. He had never gone there, so all he could do was imagine what it was like. Thinking about the infernal realm. I wonder what it is like there, and what the infernal realm has. Delia's forehead creased slightly. She understood that Linley somewhat wanted to go to the infernal realm. Delia, in her heart, didn't wish for Linley to go. In Delia's heart, she didn't want for Linley to experience danger time and time again. That sort of feeling of worry and fear would cause her to feel like she was on the verge of collapse. But Delia didn't say anything, because she understood. Liking Linley meant that she couldn't restrict him too tightly. She respected Linley's decisions. Linley sighed inwardly. He knew what Delia felt as well, but precisely because of this, Linley felt all the more grateful towards Delia. Delia had always quietly supported him. Linley suddenly remembered the wind-style divine spark he had acquired. "Delia, take a look." "What is this?" With a flip of his hand, Linley revealed a black divine spark glimmering with green light which floated in front of Delia's eyes. Delia, seeing it, couldn't help but have her eyes light up. "Wind-style divine spark? This is that Nyaf's divine spark." Linley had long ago told the details of what had happened to Delia. Delia also knew that Linley had a total of 3 divine sparks on him right now. They were respectively, the Earth-style divine god spark which had fallen into Linley's hands from when Barnus' divine clone had been killed, the fire-style divine god spark from Anra's failed assassination attempt, and then the wind-style divine god spark from Nyaf. "Go take it and fuse with it." Linley laughed. Looking at Linley, Delia finally accepted it. Delia knew, given her level of talent, especially after having fused with the divine spark to become a deity, relying on herself to gain insights and make breakthroughs would most likely require tens of thousands of years before she could break through. Delia dripped blood onto the divine spark, taking it into her body. And then she rested her head against Linley's chest. In a gentle voice, she said, "This divine spark was obtained through the hard work of my husband." Linley couldn't help but laugh. "Delia, I've heard that some of the clans in the infernal realm will use divine sparks to bring their descendants directly to the high god level." Linley sighed in praise, 3 divine sparks in a row, and they become a high god. This sort of speed really is astonishing. Fusing divine sparks was a symbol of low talent. Experts generally wouldn't fuse with divine sparks. Even if one completely fused with a divine spark, the spark and one's own soul wouldn't be 100% compatible. To fuse with the profound mysteries within, the difficulty level would be hundreds of times greater than those who became deities on their own. I will definitely work hard to learn how to use the profound mysteries of the laws within, Delia said. Next morning at dawn. Although a hint of sunlight was already shining, it was still quite cold. However, a large group of people had already gathered at the training fields of Dragonblood Castle, because everyone was sending Olivier off. This time, Olivier was going by himself to the infernal realm. Dylan, Tarasi, Caesar, the war god, and the others all had matters to resolve in the Yulan continent first. Olivier, kid, be careful in the infernal realm. Don't end up getting offed shortly after getting there. Haha, Dylan laughed as he clapped Olivier on the shoulders. Oliver's eyes had a fierce light flash through them. Get offed by someone? Killing me won't be so easy. Linley and the others all laughed and said a few final words to Olivier. If we're lucky, perhaps in the infernal realm, I'll meet with everyone again. Olivier said with a smile. There's no need to say much more. I'll leave now. As he spoke, Olivier gave Linley a profound glance. Linley could sense the hidden meaning within Oliver's gaze. Olivier stared at Linley and said, Linley, I will wait for you in the infernal realm. Don't remain hiding in this little creek forever. After speaking, Olivier flew straight towards the north. Linley couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Delia and Wharton couldn't help but look towards Linley as well. Creek. Linley's mind was very complicated right now. Linley. A voice rang out directly in Linley's mind. Linley was startled. This voice belonged to Lord Beirut. Linley, you just came back from Mount Copper Gong not too long ago, right? These next 2 days, head over to my place and bring Bibi with you. Bring Bibi. Linley was somewhat puzzled. What did Beirut want Bibi to go there for? When you and Bibi get here, I'll tell you. Remember. Hurry up. Don't waste too much time. Beirut laughed. I'll head over immediately. Linley replied. No rush. This time, when Bibi comes, he'll most likely stay with me for quite a long period of time. You and him probably won't meet for a long time. Beirut said. HRM. Linley was somewhat surprised, but Beirut didn't explain in detail, instead withdrawing his divine sense. The next afternoon, the sky was very blue, like a washed azure porcelain plate, with an occasional white cloud floating in the horizons. 2 figures were flying shoulder to shoulder through the skies. It was Linley and Bibi. The two had left Dragonblood Castle together, heading straight for the Forest of Darkness and the metallic castle within. Bibi was puzzled as well. He didn't know why Beirut was looking for him. And from the sound of it, he would need to be separated from Linley for a long time. In the vast Forest of Darkness, thousands of kilometers across, even kilometers in the air, one would still sense how vast and boundless this forest was. Upon seeing that metallic castle, Linley and Bibi descended downwards, and as they did, they sensed that ancient aura of the Forest of Darkness race towards them. Come in. Beirut's voice rang out in Linley's mind. Linley and Bibi immediately flew into the metallic castle. Come to think of it, I've never gone inside this metallic castle before. Linley laughed towards Bibi, who laughed widely. Boss, this metallic castle is quite special. It is very unique, and also very interesting. Linley was intrigued by Bibi's words. He couldn't help but take a closer look at this metallic castle. The inside of it was arranged extremely neatly, and every part of the metallic castle had a fluctuating metallic color. For example, the floor was a violet-red metallic color which reflected light. Some of the metal even formed small mountains, and within the garden, there were all sorts of flowers. These flowers can't all be made from the metallic castle, right? Linley said to Bibi. These aren't, no. Bibi shook his head. However, all of the metallic items here are made from the metallic castle itself. Boss, this metallic castle is very marvelous. Whatever you want it to transform into, it will. Linley and Bibi spoke as they entered the living room. Beirut was currently reading an extremely thick book. Not even lifting up his head, he said, "Enter." Linley entered the living room, glancing at the cover of the book. Hey? These characters don't seem to be the same as the characters of our Yulon continent. Linley was puzzled. Puzzled by these characters. Beirut raised his head to glance at Linley, then laughed. This came from an extremely long time ago. Even I don't know how many hundreds of millions of years old it is. At that time, the Yulon continent didn't even have humans. This was the time of the Earth elemental civilizations, and this was the language of the time. However, the language which we currently speak in the Yulon continent was intentionally passed down by the planar overseer of that time, shortly after humans appeared. It is the same language which is spoken in the infernal realm, the celestial realm, the netherworld, and the life realm. Beirut said. Linley nodded. Grandpa Beirut, you told me to come back yet again. What is this about? Bibi asked directly. Of course there's a reason. Beirut began to laugh. The profound mysteries of the laws you have gained insight into after becoming a deity are the profound mysteries which we Gebados rats will naturally gain upon reaching maturity. As a matter of fact, you yourself haven't actively gained insights into any profound mysteries. This time, Halfway through his words, Beirut suddenly looked towards the south in amazement. Huh? This guy? Rumble. Suddenly, the elemental essence of the entire Yulon plain, including not just the Yulon continent, but also the North Sea, the Arctic ice cap, and even the boundless South Seas, began to tremble. In particular, the elemental essence of the South Sea became to form into terrifying waves. Boom. Fortunately, the South Seas were extremely vast. When this terrifying wave of elemental essence which came forth from it reached the Yulon continent, it was nothing more than an elemental ripple. But this elemental ripple was enough to cause any experts capable of sensing it to feel astonishment in their hearts. This? What is this? Linley immediately spread out his divine sense, instantly covering the entire Yulon continent with it. This elemental ripple covers an enormous area. And the origin of it seems to be even further south. Linley's spiritual energy, despite being powerful, couldn't reach the end, to the source of where this elemental ripple came from. What scale? What tremendous scale! Beirut began to laugh. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 41, An Abrupt Change. These astonishing elemental tremors were something which even the youngest students at Magus Academies were able to clearly sense. From deities to Magus Academy initiates, countless people felt astonished at the massive scale of these elemental tremors. Even 100 forbidden spells being fired off at the same time wouldn't create such astonishing elemental vibrations. Grandpa Beirut, what is going on? Bibi asked curiously. Linley looked towards Beirut as well, who chortled, the king of the Gebados Planar Prison, Blue Fire. You know him, right? This is all his doing. His former homeland, that shattered continent, he is preparing to create it anew. What? Linley and Bibi were shocked. Create a continent? This Blue Fire is an absolute madman. Beirut exhaled. Although he is a high god, the amount of divine power and spiritual energy he has to expend in order to create a continent is an astonishing figure. This is an entire, massive continent, not just an ordinary little island. You can create a continent. Bibi didn't dare believe it. Beirut nodded. That blue fire has two divine high god clones, and he has reached an extremely frightening level of attainment in the profound mysteries of the laws. Given his power, creating a continent in a material plane isn't impossible. However, I still feel that this fellow is a bit too crazy. Crazy. Linley couldn't help but look towards the south. The creation of a continent was an astonishing spectacle. Perhaps only an expert on the level of Lord Bluefire was capable of such a thing. In the South Seas region, at the place most distant from the Yulon continent, the boundless waters of the ocean seemed to be boiling. Hiss! The seabed was emitting a hot aura. In this massive area spanning 10,000 kilometers, one could clearly see boiling hot magma rising upwards from the seabed. In the air above the underwater fountain of lava, a wild, explosive concentration of fire elemental essence was causing space to distort. Within that distortion, a human figure could be seen. This figure, dressed in a long, dark red robe, hovered in mid-air like a celestial divinity. It was indeed Bluefire Leyland. Dozens of kilometers away from Leyland was the bald man, Burgess, and the white-robed man. They looked at each other, and the white-robed man let out a breath. Big brother, third brother truly is quite mad. With that volcano as the center, he has in one breath summoned so much lava from the depths of the earth beneath the seabed. He is insane. Fortunately, third brother is nearly a paragon with regards to his understanding of the elemental laws of fire. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have been able to accomplish this so easily. The reason why Leyland was famous was because of his mastery of the elemental laws of fire. The name Bluefire was a testament to the level of attainment he had reached in the elemental laws of fire. The strength of his fire-style high god clone was far greater than that of his earth-style high god clone. It wasn't that he was weak in earth, it was that his strength in fire was simply too great. Countless amounts of magma continued to rise from beneath the ocean depths. Occasionally, they would even erupt over the surface of the water. But the amount of lava which erupted from above the surface of the ocean wasn't even a millionth of the total amount of lava being created. The vast majority of the lava which had exploded forth from the seabed had solidified into rocks within the sea. The area of the lava which Leyland had brought forth from beneath the seabed stretched out for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Only, relying on his control over the lava, he caused the majority of it to solidify and focus within the area of 10,000 kilometers. Afterwards, when they solidified due to the cold from the waters of the sea and formed rocks, the amount of sea water within this 10,000 kilometer area would lessen as well. In some places, rocks were already emerging from the surface of the sea, and most places only had a sea depth of a few hundred meters. This was something that was inconceivable, so deep within the South Sea. But Bluefire had accomplished it. The next part is going to be tricky for third brother. The bald man, Burgess, stared at the distant figure of Leyland. To control such a vast amount of earth elemental essence and form a continent, third brother's mastery of the elemental laws of earth isn't as powerful as his mastery of the elemental laws of fire. The white-robed man nodded as well. The two continued to stare at Leyland in the distance. Leyland let out a long breath, then stretched out his two hands. Rumble, the boundless earth elemental essence of the world came under his control. Within an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, the rocks and dirt all came under his control, and began rushing towards that area of 10,000 kilometers formed from solidified lava. The amount of earth elemental essence that had been summoned was too vast, creating a vacuum in earth elemental essence for hundreds of thousands of kilometers in the area around. Boom! Earth elemental essence from other areas wildly rushed in, causing space itself to tremble and distort. The countless amounts of earth elemental essence particles rushing in also created an elemental wave. The massive vibrations within hundreds of thousands of kilometers caused countless ocean creatures to suffer an untold calamity. Actually, the explosion of lava alone had already caused many creatures to be boiled to death. Too slow. At this sort of speed, the amount of time it would take to create a continent would most likely be 10 days or half a month. Leyland frowned, his scarlet eyebrows seeming to touch. It seems it won't be as easy as I thought. Leyland's body suddenly split into two. One of the two bodies, a divine clone wearing a golden robe, suddenly disintegrated soundlessly, disappearing from the world. Instantly, within the area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, the rocks and earth began to move at a pace several times faster. The divine power which my divine earth clone has built up over the countless year will most likely be completely used up. The fire-style divine clone of Leyland, wearing a dark red robe, murmured to himself. This time, when Leyland returned to the Yulan continent, he had a sour feeling in his heart. After all, his homeland had been completely destroyed, and even the very continent itself had been shattered and sunk into the seas. Thus, Leyland chose to go to the previous location of his former homeland and summon an explosive river of lava. The sea depth here wasn't that great, and so the level of difficulty would be somewhat lower as well. Creating an entire continent and creating an elemental manor, these were two completely separate concepts. O'Brien Empire. The Imperial Palace. Adkins was looking towards the south, his forehead furrowed. The nearby Barnes stood there respectfully as well. Lord Bluefire truly is daring. Adkins spoke. Barnes said in a quiet voice, creating a continent is something which will consume an astonishing amount of divine power and spiritual energy. A chuckle escaped Adkins. The amount of divine power and spiritual energy which is consumed is indeed astonishing, but the creation of a continent is primarily the doing of his divine earth clone. In other words, that powerful divine fire clone of his won't be weakened by much. Blue fire is too powerful. Adkins lowered his head, silent for a long time. Barnes stood at the side, sighing in his heart. Young master is too stubborn and competitive. He doesn't like being inferior to others. Only, in the Gebados Planar Prison, young master is far inferior to those 5 kings. If he went to the higher planes where even more experts exist, most likely he wouldn't be at the peak of the field. The treasures of the necropolis of the gods, they are young master's only hope. Barnes knew very well that Adkins definitely wouldn't give up. Adkins suddenly turned. Barnes, I don't want to wait any longer. Lord Adkins. You, Barnes was shocked. He knew what Adkins was thinking. Adkins' gaze was as sharp as a knife. This is an excellent opportunity. Bluefire is completely focused on creating that continent. He has no energy to pay attention to us. Right now, immediately go and summon Ojwin and the other 2. Yes. Barnes took a deep breath as well, immediately spreading out his divine sense towards Ojwin and the others. Adkins' face was tranquil, but his heart was filled with great excitement. The day that determines destiny. Adkins murmured to himself. Soon, Ojwin, Hanbrit, and Gatenby all arrived. The 3 immediately fell to one knee in respect. Lord Adkins. All of you, make a trip with me to the Forest of Darkness. Adkins said. Ojwin and the other 2 exchanged glances, all very puzzled. They had all felt the astonishing elemental tremors. Now, they had been ordered to go immediately to the Forest of Darkness with no explanation. The 3 could only suppress their curiosity and then follow Adkins and Barnes towards the Forest of Darkness. The Forest of Darkness. The Metallic Castle. Linley and Beirut were still together. You are planning to have Bibi gain insights into the profound mysteries of the laws. Linley looked at Beirut in astonishment. Just then, Beirut had said that he wanted Bibi to stay in the Metallic Castle to attune with the profound mysteries of the laws. After completely mastering one of them, he would allow Bibi to leave the Metallic Castle. Bibi immediately had a sour look on his face as well and said, Grandpa Beirut, let's take it slow with regards to training in the profound mysteries of the laws. Why do you insist on me staying in the Metallic Castle? Who knows how long it will take me to succeed? Don't worry. I only want you to master the simplest profound mystery of the essence of darkness. In addition, In order to help you gain insights, I have prepared a treasure to assist you. Grandpa paid an extremely great price to obtain this treasure. Beirut said. Linley couldn't help but feel astonished. From the sound of it, it seemed as though this was a treasure which could help a person in training in the elemental laws. Treasure? How precious is it? Bibi's eyes lit up. Stop asking so many questions. Beirut said seriously. Just stay here and don't make Grandpa disappointed. Linley consoled and urged Bibi as well. Bibi himself was very curious towards that treasure, and so he finally agreed. After all, Bibi also knew, his grandpa was extremely wealthy. For even Beirut to say that the price he had paid was great meant that this treasure was definitely not an ordinary one. HRM. Beirut frowned slightly. Harry. Beirut shouted. Soon, a human figure appeared in the living room. It was one of the 3 violet gold rat kings, Harry. Beirut instructed, Harry, you take care of Bibi. Don't let him run amok. I'm going out for now. Yes, father. Harry said respectfully. Linley, you come with me as well. Beirut laughed, and Linley nodded. After bidding Bibi farewell, Linley and Beirut flew directly out of the metallic castle. Flying by Beirut's side, Linley felt somewhat mystified. Lord Beirut suddenly said that we were heading out. What is this about? Hey, they are. Linley had already seen several figures flying over from far away, with the leader being the awe-inspiring Adkins. Ojwin. Linley saw Ojwin behind Adkins as well. Humph. If I have the chance, I will definitely kill him. Linley continued to feel hatred towards Ojwin. In the past, Cena's son and wives, as well as the entire palace, had all been killed by this man. He had never had a chance to avenge this enmity. Ah, Mr. Beirut. A smile immediately drifted to Adkins' face. Oh, Linley, you are here as well. Adkins' smile was very bright. Linley, you can go back for now. Beirut said. Linley bowed, and then also bowed slightly towards Adkins, flying towards the south by himself. Only, in mid-flight, Linley couldn't help but turn his head and look back. Lord Beirut suddenly came out, most likely because he knew that Adkins and the others had arrived. What is going on? In the air above the forest of darkness, a black-robed Beirut and a gold-robed Adkins were standing in mid-air, facing each other. Adkins seemed like a youngster, while Beirut seemed like an elder. Old and young, standing there facing each other. It was quite intriguing. Mr. Beirut, let's go to your place to chat. Adkins said. No need. Here is fine. Beirut said with a calm laugh. Adkins was all smiles. Fine, then. Adkins immediately spread out his Godrealm, preventing Ojwin and the others from listening to their conversation. Mr. Beirut, last time, you said that we have to wait 1,000 years before opening the necropolis of the gods, yes. That was indeed the case. Beirut had a hint of a laugh in his eyes. Adkins laughed warmly. I also know that previously, Mr. Beirut, you opened the necropolis of the gods twice in succession, once to let saints in, once to let deities in. There should only have been a gap of a month or so in between. I imagine that the opening of the necropolis of the gods is determined by yourself, Mr. Beirut. Right. The Almighty Sovereign hasn't set a specific schedule for the opening and closing. I alone am responsible for determining when it will be opened. Beirut said. Adkins' smile became absolutely incandescent. That's absolutely wonderful. Mr. Beirut, I wonder, would it be possible for us to open the necropolis of the gods in advance? In advance? Beirut stared at Adkins in astonishment. Right, for example, tomorrow. I don't know if you would consider it, Mr. Beirut. Adkins looked at Beirut, his eyes carrying a hint of anticipation. Oh, well now, Beirut pondered for a moment. Adkins could only wait, absolutely frantic. Finally, Beirut nodded slightly. That's not impossible. Opening it tomorrow is doable. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 42, Beirut's Power. Having received a positive response, Adkins' breathing couldn't help but grow ragged. His mind instantly became filled with all sorts of dreams. If I can acquire a sovereign artifact within the necropolis of the gods, or perhaps one of the legendary sovereign sparks and become an incomparably mighty sovereign, then Adkins. Just thinking about it made Adkins' blood boil in anticipation. But suddenly, Beirut frowned and he said hurriedly, "Wait, we can't open it tomorrow." "What? Why not?" Adkins was frantic. Beirut explained, "Adkins, I forgot about something. Bluefire is currently rebuilding his homeland. His Divine Earth clone is wholeheartedly focused on rebuilding the continent, while his Divine Fire clone is standing guard. He can't divide his attention right now. Given his building speed, I imagine he still needs a few more days. How about this? Let's wait 10 days, then enter together." Adkins felt a surge of franticness in his heart. He secretly said to himself, "That's exactly the issue, I don't want Bluefire to enter. If Bluefire enters, then how will I possibly compete against him?" Adkins knew exactly how powerful Bluefire was. "Lord Beirut," Adkins said sincerely. Just from the fact that he was now addressing Beirut as Lord was proof of how much importance he placed on the treasures of the necropolis of the gods. "I think, there's no need to allow that Bluefire to enter the necropolis of the gods. How about just the two of us enter? What do you think?" Adkins finally got to the point. Just him and Beirut. When the time came, only he, Adkins, would enter the necropolis of the gods. Given that, who would be able to compete against him? Oh! Beirut stared at Adkins, as if he suddenly understood. A hint of a smile was on his lips. "So Adkins, this is what you desire?" Adkins continued to look at Beirut. "Adkins, your fantasy is a bit too perfect." Beirut smirked. "If I let you go in by yourself, you might be able to acquire the treasures within. But there is no benefit to me at all. In addition, I would run the risk of offending Bluefire. Do you think that I, Beirut, am so old that my vision has gone bad, that I wouldn't know who is more important between you and Bluefire?" Adkins laughed ingratiatingly and said hurriedly, "Lord Beirut, your words aren't correct. True, Bluefire is more powerful than me, and if he goes in, he would at least be able to acquire a sovereign artifact. However, Lord Beirut, think about it. Given Bluefire's temper, if he were to obtain a sovereign spark, how could he possibly submit to you? I think, Lord Beirut, that you don't have any confidence in defeating a Bluefire who wields a sovereign artifact, right?" Beirut just laughed. Adkins urged yet again, "But I'm different. Lord Beirut, if you have any requests, just go ahead and state them." "Oh!" Beirut's eyes lit up. "This necropolis of the gods does indeed have sovereign artifacts," Beirut said. Adkins' eyes instantly lit up. Beirut continued, "Adkins, I want you to swear an oath to the overgod of fate that the first sovereign artifact you acquire, you have to give to me." Adkins started slightly. "How many sovereign artifacts are within?" "Not just one," Beirut said. "Fine. No matter if I acquire one or two of them, the first sovereign artifact I will definitely give to you, Lord Beirut." Adkins gritted his teeth. "Don't rush. No point in saying it now. Later, you can make an oath to the overgod of fate," Beirut said with a calm laugh. An oath sworn to the overgod of fate definitely could not be violated. The overgod of fate was in actuality the edicts of fate, one of the edicts which governed the functioning of the vast universe. If you were to violate such an oath, the edicts of fate would naturally cause you to suffer endlessly. This is the first matter. There are still two other matters. Beirut said. This Beirut really is black-hearted. Adkins secretly cursed, but he didn't have any other options. He had to force himself to squeeze out a smile. Lord Beirut, pray tell. Beirut said with a calm laugh, the second matter is, after leaving the necropolis of the gods, you have to serve me for 1,000,000 years. Adkins stared. Serve? Even in the Gebados Planar Prison, he, Adkins, had never served anyone as a vassal. What, you don't accept? If you don't accept, that's fine. We can forget about this necropolis of the gods matter. As Beirut spoke, he seemed about to turn. Adkins gritted his teeth. I accept. After I return from the necropolis of the gods, I, Adkins, will definitely serve you, Lord Beirut, for 1,000,000 years. Beirut smiled and nodded. Lord Beirut, now you can let me go to the necropolis of the gods alone, right? Adkins had a hint of anger in his heart now. Don't rush. There's the third requirement as well. Beirut was still all smiles. No matter how good-tempered a person was, hearing this, they would still be irritated. What's more, Adkins was an explosive, brutally tempered person to begin with. He couldn't help but say, Lord Beirut, how many requirements do you have? This is the final one. Beirut laughed calmly. If you don't agree, then forget about entering the necropolis of the gods. Adkins suppressed his rage and growled, Speak. My third request is very simple. I don't want to have problems in the future. So, please go kill Bluefire. Beirut continued to smile faintly. Alas, I don't want Bluefire to come get revenge on me in the future. Thus, I'll have to trouble you to kill him. Adkins was instantly stupefied. Kill Bluefire? If I, Adkins, had the ability to kill Bluefire, why would I be here speaking with you at such length? Adkins said furiously. Oh. Then there's nothing I can do about that. Beirut's face sank. Then Adkins, please go back. Adkins instantly understood. He was so angry, his face turned white. Pointing at Beirut in a fury, he said, Beirut, you played me for a fool. The three requirements that Beirut required were completely unattainable. The first two requirements were already excessive, but this third one was impossible. Ha ha. Beirut began to laugh, and he looked at Adkins as he laughed. Adkins, you just now realize it? Ha ha, I did indeed play you for a fool. I was originally planning to wait 1,000 years, at which point I would just bring Bluefire into the necropolis of the gods. I didn't expect that you would come here so quickly. But that's for the better. It let me see how you look when utterly furious, ha ha. Adkins' face changed. You never planned to let me enter the necropolis of the gods. Right. Beirut smirked. I never had the intention of letting you enter. I only planned to let Bluefire enter. Adkins' entire body was shaking slightly. By nature, he was arrogant and never willing to be subordinate to others. Adkins had always dreamed of one day reaching the heights of power and exceed Bluefire and the other 5 kings. But he understood that given his talent, his only hope was to acquire a sovereign artifact, or perhaps a sovereign spark, something he dreamed about. However, his hopes had been dashed. In the air above the forest of darkness, Adkins and Beirut stood there, looking at each other. Their conversation was separated from the outside world by the god realm. The distant Barnus, Ojwin, and others couldn't hear their conversation at all. They only saw that Adkins' expression had clearly become furious. Boom! With Adkins at the center, a black and white light suddenly shot out in every direction. The area covered by the black light caused space to distort, and the nearby trees began to be devoured. Wherever the white light shone upon, matter evaporated like snow in the face of the sun. Adkins had 2 mighty divine clones, darkness and light. Cocooned by darkness and light, Adkins was absolutely enraged. Adkins pointed furiously at Beirut, bellowing in anger, "Beirut, you are a despicable, base person who relies on having a sovereign at his back. Today, I lowered myself to beg you and gave you face time and time again. I didn't expect that you would insult me like this. Fine. Fine. You, Beirut, abuse the weak while fearing the strong. You are afraid of offending Blue Fire, but you come insult me. You are garbage." These words weren't restricted by the God realm. They spread out in every direction, with Barnes and the others hearing them clearly. Barnes was greatly shocked. "Lord Adkins, no. Not good." Hanbrit, Gattenby and Ojwin's faces all changed as well. Hundreds of kilometers away from Adkins and Beirut, Linley couldn't help but turn his head to stare in astonishment as well. What a powerful aura of darkness and light energy. Linley was inwardly shocked. The explosive release of energy from Adkins had naturally attracted Linley's attention. Such powerful energy, can it be that Adkins and Lord Beirut are coming to blows? Linley was mystified. And then, Linley immediately headed back. Beirut's face turned cold, as though covered with a layer of frost. Abuse the weak while fearing the strong? Garbage. You've trained for just 1,000,000 years. Even if you have a sovereign artifact, do you even know how to use it properly? A semi-translucent long blade, seemingly made out of ice, appeared in Adkins' hand. He looked disdainfully at Beirut. "If you don't have a sovereign artifact, then die. If you do, good. It is time for the sovereign artifact to have a new master." Adkins had never held Beirut in any regard. As he saw it, Beirut, who had trained for just 1,000,000 years, was nothing more than an upstart junior. How many elemental laws could he have fused? Have a new master? With a flip of his hand, Beirut revealed a pitch-black staff. This staff emanated a terrifying aura, and Adkins' eyelids twitched, staring in astonishment at the staff in Beirut's hands. With an insulting smirk, Beirut said, "The sovereign artifact is here. If you have the ability, come and take it." This was a perfect, undamaged sovereign artifact, not like Linley's. The black staff in Beirut's hands emitted an aura so powerful that even the distant Barnes, Ojwin, and the others had their faces turn white. Adkins' eyes couldn't help but narrow. He secretly said, "This Beirut actually really does have a sovereign artifact. All the better. At worst, today, I'll lose a divine clone. I have to kill him and seize that sovereign artifact." Adkins had made up his mind, and now he acted straightforwardly. Barnes was frantic, but this time, he was no longer able to stop this battle. Ojwin, Barnes, and the others all watched the two high gods face off from afar. Suddenly, the dark and light energy exploded forth, causing space to shudder. Even Barnes, the other three immediately utilized their god realm to defend. Adkins divided his body into two, his divine light clone and his divine darkness clone. The divine light clone wielded that long blade, while his divine dark clone was hidden within the darkness, disappearing within. Adkins' divine light clone instantly charged towards Beirut, his face ferocious as he roared, "Die!" At the same instant he roared, his blade stabbed out, as eye-piercingly bright as the sun. At the same moment, the divine dark clone hidden within the darkness appeared as well, as a black dagger silently stabbed towards Beirut. "Ha ha," Beirut laughed loudly and gaily, sweeping out with his black staff. The black staff seemed to have turned into a blur, smashing directly down upon that brilliant blade which shone like the sun. Bang! The high god artifact blade instantly disintegrated, but the black staff didn't slow down at all, smashing directly down upon the head of Adkins' divine light clone. Boom! The head completely exploded, leaving behind only a brilliant divine spark hovering in midair. Adkins' divine darkness clone laughed insidiously. He didn't even move. He is asking for death. In the same instant his divine light clone was destroyed, Adkins' black dagger stabbed directly towards Beirut's head. Clang. The black dagger stabbed onto Beirut's head, but there was only a metallic ringing sound. How is that possible? Adkins stared in astonishment, his eyes wide. His full power attack with his high god artifact hadn't been able to even break through Beirut's skin? Beirut's head was actually comparable in toughness to a high god artifact? This was utterly impossible. But, it had happened. Beirut turned his head to glance at the boggled Adkins. What, are you disappointed? Flee. Adkins' face changed dramatically. He finally understood that this Beirut was utterly terrifying. Even the 5 kings of the Gebados Planar Prison wouldn't dare to use their heads to take a full power attack of a high god. Rumble. The black staff, moving at a speed that was seemingly dozens of times faster than when it had destroyed the divine light clone, instantly passed through Adkins' head. Adkins' head soundless disintegrated, leaving behind only a darkness-style divine spark floating next to Beirut. And then, both of the divine sparks entered Beirut's hands. The 2 headless corpses fell from the sky. Beirut lowered his head to glance at them, murmuring, "Too weak, too weak." Compared to the former era's blood-violet fiend and the 12-winged high god angel, he was far too weak. Beirut, with just 2 casual sweeps of his staff, had killed Adkins. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 43, Extreme Joy Turns to Grief. Barnes, Ojwin, Hanbrit, and Gatenby all stared, slack-jawed and eyes round. They had watched the battle which had occurred just now. In front of Beirut, Adkins was like an infant, completely incapable of resistance. The most monstrous part of it was, Adkins had delivered a full power attack against Beirut's head, but Beirut hadn't been hurt at all. Funny. So funny. Beirut shook his head, let out a sigh, then flew at high speed towards his metallic castle in the north. Actually, Beirut had been prepared for this battle long ago. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have left the metallic castle to prepare for battle with Adkins in mid-air. Wuo, Ojwin and everyone else let out a long breath. Fortunately, Beirut had completely ignored them when he had left. Otherwise, all 4 of them combined wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Beirut's staff. How terrifying! Hanbrit let out a sigh. Barnes stared at the 2 headless corpses below. Utterly agonized, he said, "Young master." Barnes directly flew downwards. He and Adkins had an extremely close relationship. The 2 had been together for a very long time, and now that Adkins was dead, Barnes was filled with agony as well. Ojwin's eyes lit up. The interspatial ring. Ojwin saw that on the 2 corpses below, the divine light corpse was still wearing an interspatial ring on one of its fingers. Adkins' interspatial ring has a divine high god spark in it. Ojwin's heart began to tremble. Even in his dreams, Ojwin fantasized about becoming a high god. And now, the chance had come. Perhaps that interspatial ring has a light-style spark. Ojwin secretly said to himself. Ojwin immediately sneaked a peek at the nearby Gatenby and Hanbrit, but unexpectedly, Hanbrit and Gatenby were also glancing at him and each other. The 3 of them exchanged glances, then all grinned. They all knew what the others were thinking. Of the 4 subordinates of Adkins, most likely only Barnes wasn't interested in that divine high god spark. After all, it wasn't suited for him to fuse with. All 3 of them had the same idea. Hanbrit, Gatenby, you also want that divine high god spark in the interspatial ring, right? Ojwin directly sent a message via his divine sense. Hanbrit and Gatenby's eyes contained a hint of amusement. Gatenby replied with his divine sense, however, we have to deal with Barnes first. He is very powerful. If we don't kill him, there's no way we will be able to get that interspatial ring. All right. All of us will join forces and pool our power to kill Barnes. As for the divine spark, after we acquire it, let's see what element it is. Whoever it suits, that's who will get it. Hanbrit said, and Ojwin and Gatenby both expressed assent. The 3 exchanged a glance, and then flew downwards as if by prior agreement. "Lord Atkins." Gatenby spoke out in a somewhat agonized manner. "Mr. Barnes, don't be too heartbroken." Hanbrit flew over as well. Barnes was currently lost in his agony. The scene of him being together with Atkins over the course of all these years flashed through his mind, and tears couldn't help but begin to trickle down Barnes' face. He didn't have any idea as to what Ojwin and the other two were planning. "Let's do it!" Ojwin shouted through his divine sense to the others. Ojwin, Gatenby, and Hanbrit simultaneously had their weapons appear in their hands, and in the next instant, simultaneously charged towards the nearby Barnes. The three gods revealed a murderous look in their eyes, not holding back at all. Not good. Barnes suddenly sensed this terrifying aura and immediately transformed into a ray of lightning, flying away and fleeing. Unfortunately, no matter how fast an expert was, fleeing still had a short wind-up phase. In that instant, his speed wasn't very fast, while Ojwin, Gatenby, and Hanbrit had already reached the limits of their speed as they pincer attacked him. "What are you doing?" Barnes' divine sense swept into the minds of the three with a furious howl. Barnes had already turned and was facing Ojwin and the other two while he continued to retreat at high speed. Die! A green sword flash, a holy light flash, and a warblade that carried within it a destructive aura. The three gods struck out at full strength, and the ancient trees nearby that had existed for innumerable years were transformed into dust, with the earth itself sinking down as well. Bastards! Barnes was a smart man. He instantly could guess what the goal of these three was. He didn't have any chance to flee right now. Grinding his teeth, Barnes transformed into a human-shaped bolt of lightning. The high god artifact in his hand, the Spear of Cortez, directly pierced towards Gatenby, as Barnes hoped to make a breakthrough at this point and flee with his life. But how could Ojwin and the other two let him flee? Boom! 3-on-1. The earth seemed to have transformed into a rippling pond. Within 1,000 meters, the nearby boulders, trees, and magical beasts all transformed into powder. Dust flew everywhere, but the battle had already concluded. Barnes' eyes had already grown dim, and he had collapsed, following in Atkins' footsteps. Bang! Gatenby, a hole having been created in his chest, also collapsed at the same instant. The Spear of Cortez didn't just possess a material attack, it also possessed a spiritual attack. That Barnes had taken the combined strikes of those three gods, but although he died, even in death, he had pulled down the most powerful of the three, Gatenby, into death with him. This Barnes really had been the most powerful of those four gods. Whew! Ojwin and Hanbrit were both shaking in their hearts. The dust slowly settled. The two exchanged a glance, feeling that they were lucky. If Barnes had aimed his dying blow at either one of them, they wouldn't have been able to dodge either. Hanbrit, whoever matches up with the element of this divine spark in the interspatial ring is the person who will get it. Ojwin said with a laugh. Of course. Hanbrit laughed. However, the person who doesn't get the divine spark will get the Spear of Cortez. What do you say? Haha, of course I agree. Ojwin laughed. Right now, the ground had four corpses. The two headless corpses of Atkins, the corpse of Gatenby, and the corpse of Barnes. Meanwhile, Ojwin and Hanbrit were happily discussing how to divide up the rewards. Who will bind the interspatial ring with blood and withdraw the divine spark within? Ojwin looked at Hanbrit. Hanbrit said, Ojwin, how could I distrust you? You can go ahead and activate the interspatial ring. Ojwin nodded and laughed as he walked over to Atkins' divine light corpse. But as he walked past Hanbrit, Hanbrit's eyes had a cold light flash past them. He secretly said to himself, prepare to die. The High God Spark and the High God Artifact will both be mine. Hanbrit suddenly moved, delivering his most powerful attack towards Ojwin. The strange thing was, at the same instant Hanbrit made his move, Ajwin's body suddenly flashed backwards in a straight line, chopping out with that great sword in his hands. Astonishment. The two both started slightly, astonished that the other was thinking the same thing they had been. The High God artifact and spark are both mine. Ajwin howled angrily. The long sword that was wrapped by that green light and the great sword that was emitting that holy light simultaneously pierced towards each other. Ajwin and Hanbrit's gazes met for an instant, and they each saw the murderous intent in the eyes of the other. If you didn't die, then I will perish. Kill the other, obtain all the treasures. Clang. The green light sword collided with the holy light great sword in a strange manner. The blue light shook, and it was as though space had suddenly been torn apart. An interspatial crack suddenly flashed towards Ajwin's body. Ajwin retreated rapidly, but his body actually exploded. Only his head flew off into the distance. Ha! Ajwin, only having his head left, still laughed delightedly and loudly. Boom! Hanbrit's body slumped to the ground. He was dead. Hanbrit trained in the elemental laws of the wind. He didn't understand much about profound mysteries involving spiritual attacks. His most powerful attacks were of the dimensional variety. Although he had badly injured Ajwin, that sword blow from Ajwin had contained a spiritual attack which had destroyed his soul. Of the four mighty gods, only Ajwin remained. I finally succeeded. Ajwin was so excited that his face was shaking. His head immediately floated over to Adkin's corpse. At the same time, his body below his neck quickly began to regrow. Ajwin simply couldn't wait. He immediately controlled a drop of blood and sent it onto the interspatial ring, which absorbed it like a sponge. By this point, Ajwin's arm had already grown out. It must be light style. It must be light style. Ajwin murmured in his heart. Ajwin was extremely nervous. Grabbing the interspatial ring, he gritted his teeth and immediately retrieved the divine spark within. Ajwin stared wide-eyed at the divine spark in front of him. The black divine spark which was emanating a white light. Light style divine spark. It is light style. Ajwin was so excited, his body shook. Ha! It is light style, it is light style. Ajwin was so happy he began to sob. Adkins. Ha! I've endured servitude for you for so long, all for the sake of this day. It really is light style. Soon, I will be a high god. I will be a high god. Ajwin's heart was shaking. When I become a high god, Kingsley, my son, father will definitely get revenge for you. Definitely. Ajwin's eyes blazed. His body had already grown to his waist. Ajwin immediately looked at the divine high god spark in his hands. He couldn't help but reveal an excited and satisfied smile on his face. In the planar prison, he had longed for this day. After countless years, he had finally acquired a high god spark. I, Ajwin, am finally going to become a high god. Dripping a drop of blood onto the divine high god spark, the spark immediately fused into his body. Ajwin's face was covered with anticipation for the future, but right at that moment. Ajwin's face changed. He couldn't help but turn to look. A cold pair of dark golden eyes was staring at him. The devilish blood-violet sword. The adamantine heavy sword emanating that dark blue glow. Linley. Ajwin's face changed. He had just undergone 2 life-and-death battles. His spiritual energy was 90% used up, and the high god spark hadn't been fused yet. He would need dozens of years to fuse with it. The worst thing was, Linley was too close to him. With his not yet fully repaired body, his speed wasn't as fast as it could be. There was no time to flee. Die. Linley charged down from above, the adamantine heavy sword and blood-violet chopping down simultaneously. HRMPH, you are asking for death. Ajwin laughed coldly in his heart. He couldn't flee. Flee. Why did he have to flee? Linley was nothing more than a demigod. The great sword in Ojwin's hands, shining with that holy light, carried a spiritual power with it as he unhesitatingly swung it towards Linley's blood-violet sword. The choice he made was the same one which Enraz had made. Given his experience, he could clearly tell that blood-violet was an extraordinary weapon. Clang! In that same instant when blood-violet collided with that great sword shining with a holy light, Ojwin flew backwards, wanting to avoid the attack of that adamantine heavy sword. Rumble! From the adamantine heavy sword, a faint, yellow, illusory sword flew out like a bolt of lightning and entered Ojwin's body. This was the attack which Linley had been building up power for, his most powerful attack. The most powerful attack, developed from the fusion of the throbbing pulse of the world and the essence of the earth. Voidwave sword. No. Ojwin's eyes instantly turned round. He didn't have any chance to feel regret or grief. He immediately toppled to the ground. Ojwin had a chance to become a high god and then he would live life as he pleased. Even in the infernal realm, he would have been considered a skilled expert. But unfortunately, in terms of spiritual attacks, you aren't even as strong as that god who tried to assassinate me at Mount Copper Gong. Linley looked at Ojwin's corpse. Fighting over a high god spark. Linley glanced at the nearby god corpses, then began to collect the divine artifacts, divine sparks, and interspatial rings. Only, Ojwin's eyes remained open and round. In the instant he had died, his eyes had been filled with disbelief and despair. Just now, he had been so excited that he was shaking as he imagined how beautiful the future would be. But all of this had been destroyed. He, Ojwin, died with his eyes open and uncomprehending. Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 44, Only One Person. Within the forest of darkness, upon that empty terrain where the battle had just occurred, Linley was currently reaping the spoils of war. His face couldn't help but reveal a grin. So many treasures. Killing deities and taking their wealth really is a rather attractive proposition. All I did was kill Ojwin, but I received so many treasures. Most likely, in the infernal realm, there are many people who are willing to engage in this sort of business which involves no sunken costs. Soon, the treasures were all collected. 2 high god artifacts, 1 high god spark, and 4 god sparks as well as 5 interspatial rings. Linley couldn't help but feel excited. 4 god sparks. Adding those to the 2 god sparks he had already acquired meant Linley would have 6 god sparks now. These 2 high god artifacts, Linley weighed the 2 divine artifacts with his eyes. One was the spear of Cortez, while the other was a black dagger. When Beirut had killed Adkins, he had only taken the 2 divine sparks as he left. Adkins had 2 high god artifacts, one of which was destroyed. The other was this black dagger, which was sent flying far away. Linley naturally collected it. Linley put the high god artifact and the divine spark into his interspatial ring. Only 5 rings remained in his hand. I wonder what these interspatial rings of the 4 gods contain. Once I return to Dragonblood Castle, I'll take a closer look. Also, Adkins' interspatial ring. Aside from divine sparks, perhaps there are some other treasures within. Linley secretly thought to himself. Fortunately, I sensed the energy wave and immediately returned. Otherwise, a wonderful opportunity would have slipped away. Linley secretly celebrated. This time, not only had he gained revenge for little Cass, he had also acquired quite a few divine sparks and divine artifacts. Linley wouldn't disdain having more treasures such as things, the more the better. I was right at the Forest of Darkness, so of course I was able to hurry over. Any deities outside the Forest of Darkness who wanted to fly over would probably still take nearly an hour to get here. Linley was certain that nobody would be able to make it in time. After all, the battle just now had only taken a little bit of time. Linley glanced at the area. However, it's still best to leave immediately. Whoosh! Linley immediately took to the air, wanting to fly towards the south. Linley, Don't be in an urge to leave. A sound rang out in Linley's mind, while at the same time, a black shadow appeared in front of Linley. Black hair, black whiskers. It was Lord Beirut, who had killed Adkins so easily just now. Lord Beirut. Linley felt relaxed. Beirut looked at Linley, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Linley, you have gotten quite a nice haul of things today. I was lucky. I sensed that powerful energy wave, so I hurried back to see what was happening. Only, my flying speed wasn't fast enough. By the time I made it here, that Adkins had already died. All I could do was watch as the four of them fought and killed each other. Linley said honestly. Beirut nodded. As far as Beirut was concerned, he didn't care at all about these items which Linley had acquired. Linley, there's something I must tell you. Beirut went straight to the point. Oh. Linley was somewhat surprised. Beirut laughed calmly. In the past, didn't I inform all of the deities of the Yulan continent via mental message that the necropolis of the gods will open 1,000 years from now? Yes. Linley was somewhat puzzled. Lord Beirut, have you changed your plans? Linley could sense that Beirut's words had a hidden meaning within them. He couldn't help but make this guess. If Beirut had this intention, that would be normal. Currently, in the Yulan continent, aside from Beirut himself, now that Sadista and Adkins were dead, the only high god remaining was Bluefire Leyland. No, Beirut shook his head. 1,000 years from now, I will still open the necropolis of the gods. However, I have already discussed this with Bluefire. Half a month from now, I will permit Bluefire to enter the necropolis of the gods by himself. Just him alone. Linley was very surprised. Beirut nodded. Lord Beirut, there are other deities present in the Yulan continent. Linley said hurriedly. Linley felt that for Beirut to act in such a way seemed to be rather unfair to the other deities. After all, everyone else was present at the Yulan continent as well. They should at least be given a chance. Beirut shook his head. No need. The greatest treasure of the necropolis of the gods can only be acquired by the most powerful of high gods. Your ordinary demigods and gods will at most be able to acquire a divine spark within. Linley's heart was stirred. This greatest treasure is most likely a sovereign artifact. Beirut continued, thus, Linley, help me inform Tarasi and the others about this affair. Whether they stay or leave is up to them. Beirut had a bit of a relationship to Tarasi, after all. Tarasi had, after all, served as the manager of the lower 11 floors of the necropolis of the gods. I will definitely convey your words. Linley said. And then, Linley and Beirut separated. Linley flew at high speed back to Dragonblood Castle. Upon returning to Dragonblood Castle, Linley first bound the 5 interspatial rings with blood, giving the contents of the ring a good inspection. While inspecting the rings, he found some excellent items within. Ojwin's interspatial ring had a fire-style demigod spark, Gatenby's had a earth-style demigod spark, and there were several divine artifacts as well. Now, Linley had a total of 6 god sparks and 2 demigod sparks. He had multiple demigod artifacts and god artifacts, as well as 2 high god artifacts. As soon as he had returned, Linley had begun to sort through and put these things on display, frightening the nearby Delia. Afterwards, Linley described what had happened in detail. Only then did Delia let out a sigh of relief. Within the room where Linley and Delia stayed, Linley was drinking a cup of cool fruit wine. That Ojwin finally died. Delia let out a long breath. He's dead. When Sina hears the news, he should feel a bit better. In his heart, Linley had always felt that it was still the fault of Olivier, Desri, and himself that so many experts had descended from the Gebados Planar Prison and caused trouble. Delia could sense the pressure Linley felt from these words. Changing the topic, she said, Linley, in the past, the Yulan continent didn't have many deities, and divine sparks were rare. I didn't imagine that you would be able to obtain so many divine sparks. So many divine sparks. Linley knew well that every single divine spark had been obtained through slaughter. If it wasn't others trying to kill him, it was him killing others. Divine sparks aren't so easily acquired. Linley sighed. Hearing this, Delia understood what Linley was thinking. I suddenly understand a little. Delia's eyes had a light flash through them. In the past, there were very few deities in the Yulan continent. You could count them on one hand. Naturally, divine sparks would be hard to acquire. However, these days, deities are everywhere. Only the powerful can obtain divine sparks. The weak will be killed. It is much like how the rich will accumulate more wealth, while the poor will be robbed of even what little they have. For someone as mighty as Beirut or Blue Fire, if they wanted divine sparks, they could acquire them easily. Even most high gods would easily be killed by them. As for Linley, he had originally belonged to the group who would be robbed. Only, he had that damaged soul-protecting sovereign artifact. The damaged sovereign artifact had caused Linley's status to change. It gave him a stable footing to at least avoid being robbed. Occasionally, he could plunder others. Right, Linley. Right now, since you have 2 demigod sparks of earth and fire, as well as god sparks, doesn't that mean you can let 2 people become full gods? Delia suddenly asked. Linley had a thought. Fire element. When Anraz had died, Linley had acquired a fire god spark. Ojwin, in his interspatial ring, had a fire element demigod spark. Warden. Linley suddenly sent his divine sense to Warden. Warden, come to my courtyard. Warden liked training in the elemental laws of fire. Unfortunately, Warden's talent was very average. Given his training speed, he would most likely have to train for thousands of years or even longer before reaching the deity level. Big brother. Warden pushed open the door to the courtyard, laughing as he walked in. Big bro, you called. Linley laughed as he looked at his little brother. Warden. How are you doing in terms of analyzing the elemental laws of fire? As Linley mentioned this, Warden's face turned sour. He said with resignation, Big bro, you know what my training speed is like. Right now, I have only made a little bit of progress. Given this sort of speed, who knows how long it will be before I reach the Prime Saint level, much less breaking through the Prime Saint bottleneck and reaching the deity level. Linley laughed. Warden, take a look at this. With a flip of his hand, Linley placed the 2 fire divine sparks on the stone table. Warden, seeing the black sparks emanating a red light, stared with round eyes. He then looked at Linley in astonishment, stuttering, Big bro, what are you? These are 2 fire-style divine sparks. One is a demigod spark, while the other is a god spark. First fuse with that spark, and afterwards, go fuse with the god spark. After completely fusing with the 2, you will be a full god. Linley said with assurance and confidence. Warden was somewhat numb. He had just been chatting casually with his wife just now, but all of a sudden, Linley had called him over and was now telling him, I have 2 sparks. Fuse with them and you will be a god. God-level deity. Warden felt his mind enter a state of disorder. All he could think of were those 3 words God-level deity. Linley and Delia looked at each other and laughed. Whoa! Warden let out a long breath. His brain finally started to function again. He looked at Linley. Big bro, you really make me speechless. All these years, I've been dreaming about becoming a deity one day. But I wouldn't have expected that in the blink of an eye, you are suddenly about to make me become a god. This is really. Big bro, you can't make others feel so bad about themselves like this. I am about to be scared silly. You little punk. Linley laughed while berating him, remember, first fuse with the demigod spark. I'm going to start fusing now. Wharton couldn't repress his excitement. He immediately bound the demigod spark and took it into his body, then stored the god spark into his interspatial ring. Wharton intentionally sighed, "Alas, big bro, you still aren't that awesome. If you were able to acquire a fire-style high god spark for me to fuse, then in the future, I'd be a high god, right?" Looking at the chortling Wharton, Linley understood that Wharton was in an extremely good mood. "You want a high god spark? Hurry up and go have people prepare a banquet for tonight. Tonight, I have something important to declare." Wharton immediately replied loudly, "No problem at all." In Dragonblood Castle, the deities only occasionally gathered together to eat. Tonight, Linley actively invited Taurasi, Dylan, and the others. Linley still remembered Beirut's instructions to him. That night, at the banquet, everyone was laughing calmly while eating and drinking. Everyone. Linley suddenly raised his voice. Instantly, the entire hall became quiet. Taurasi, Dylan, the war god, and the high priest all looked puzzledly at Linley. "There's something I must tell everyone. Lord Beirut, in the coming days, will take Lord Bluefire into the necropolis of the gods," Linley said. "He is going to open the necropolis of the gods early," Taurasi said in surprise and excitement. Linley shook his head. "Not exactly, because this time, he will only let Lord Bluefire enter by himself." Taurasi and Dylan were both stunned. They were both remaining at the Yulon continent primarily because they wanted to have a chance to see what the greatest treasure of the necropolis of the gods was. They just wanted to watch and be amused, in truth. "We won't be allowed in? We won't even know if Lord Bluefire will obtain the treasure or not." Taurasi shook his head and sighed, then glanced sideways at Dylan. "Dylan, what do you think? I feel rather bored now. That Adkins is also dead, and only Lord Bluefire will be allowed into the necropolis of the gods. As I see it, the Yulon continent is now rather boring. I'm planning to leave the Yulon plain in the next few days and go to the infernal realm. What about you?" "Me?" Dylan hesitated for a moment, then said, "Then, I'll go with you to the infernal realm." Book 13, Gebados, Chapter 45, Indigo Prefecture. The nearby Caesar drained the wine in his cup at one gulp, then said, "Go to the infernal realm. Adkins and his gods are all dead, while Lord Beirut is only permitting Lord Bluefire to enter the necropolis of the gods. Then, I'll go with you as well." The war god and the high priest didn't say anything, but everyone knew that the war god would follow Taurasi. "Linley, how about you?" Caesar looked at Linley. "Come along with us. In the Yulon continent, there's nothing interesting left." "Me?" Linley glanced at the nearby Delia, then laughed toward Caesar, "I'm in no rush. All of you have trained for thousands of years, while I haven't trained for even 100 years. In addition, Bibi is still in the forest of darkness. What a pity." Caesar let out a sigh. Taurasi, Dylan, the war god, and Caesar began to chat with each other about the affairs of the infernal realm. Watching them, Linley had to admit that in his heart, he envied them. The infernal realm. Linley was filled with all sorts of imaginings regarding the infernal realm. Tonight, the third day after the banquet, Taurasi and the others left the Yulon plain. A large group of people congregated at Dragonblood Castle, with Fane and Dixie amongst them. All of them had come to send off their teachers. "Dylan, you are even taking your 2 sons with you." Caesar laughed as he spoke. Dylan nodded, as though this was only natural. Of course. Dylan's 2 children were 6-eyed golden N-eye lions. Before entering the necropolis of the gods, Dylan had asked for a demigod spark for one of his sons. Afterwards, when Dylan had left the necropolis of the gods, he had already become a god. When those deities of the Gebados Planar Prison had descended, Dylan had killed a demigod and seized a divine spark for his son. Teacher. Dixie and the others were somewhat reluctant to part from the high priest, Catherine. Train well. The high priest said gently. You are already saints now. Once you reach the deity level, if you don't want to stay in the Yulon plane any longer, go to the higher planes. That is the place where deities should truly stay. Teacher, where are you going? Dixie asked hurriedly. I'm different from them. I am planning to go to the life realm. The high priest said calmly. All right, let's all head out. Tarasi glanced around and said. And then, under the gazes of Linley and the others, this group of experts flew out of Dragon Blood Castle at high speed towards the Arctic ice cap, quickly disappearing beyond the horizon. Caesar and Dylan have left as well. Linley said softly. Delia, by his side, glanced at him. The news that Bluefire was going by himself into the necropolis of the gods quickly spread across the entire Yulon continent. Spreading this news through Linley was the intention of Beirut. In addition, Adkins and his 4 gods had all died. This had a major impact on the gods of the Yulon continent. Aside from a few deities, the vast majority of deities all chose to leave the necropolis of the gods and head towards the higher planes. Roughly 16 years after Adkins' death, Warden finally finished fusing with his demigod spark. He was now a demigod as well. As for Delia, 19 years after Adkins' death, she finally completely fused the god-level wind-style spark and became a god. Yulon calendar, year 10,092. Late autumn. Sallow yellow leaves were slowly falling. Rumble, the entire world seemed to tremble gently, and a unique ripple spread out. Linley was very familiar with this rippling sensation. Standing beneath the tree, Linley suddenly turned to stare towards the north. Frowning, he said, HRM? Yet another person became a deity on their own power. That was the ripple created by the descent of the natural laws. Only when a person became a deity on their own would the natural laws descend. Linley, come to my place. Beirut's voice rang out in Linley's mind. Linley was puzzled, but he immediately flew out of Dragon Blood Castle towards the Forest of Darkness. Just as Linley entered the metallic castle, he heard a voice ring out. Boss. Bibi's voice was very loud. Linley raised his head to look, and he couldn't help but feel some shock. Bibi, you, he found out, to his amazement, that he couldn't sense Bibi's aura at all. Thinking about the descent of the laws and the ripples just now, Linley instantly understood. Bibi, was that you, just now? Right. Bibi delightedly bowed. Boss, I spent 20 years and finally mastered the profound mysteries of the essence of darkness. I have already mastered 2 types of profound mysteries, and so I have become a god. Oh, that's rather impressive. Linley snickered. Amongst the deities, the elemental laws of the wind had 9 profound mysteries, and so one had to master 3 of them before becoming a god. Or perhaps by mastering the fusion of 2 profound mysteries, one could also become a god. Earth, fire, water, and darkness only had 6 types of profound mysteries. If one mastered 2 of them, one would become a god. Linley, come in. A voice rang out from the nearby living room. Linley and Bibi immediately entered the living room. Stroking his beard, Beirut laughed as he looked at Bibi. I gave you so many advantages and superior conditions, and I even had you only learn the most basic essence of darkness, but you still took 20 years. If I had done the same for Linley, most likely just a single year would have been enough. And you are proud about it? He's my boss. Of course my boss has to be more powerful than me. Bibi didn't mind at all. Beirut could only shake his head and laugh, then look towards Linley. Linley, take a seat first. Linley sat down to one side as commanded. Beirut let out a breath. Linley, how is your training proceeding? When will you become a god? I'm not certain either. However, I am halfway through the fusion of 2 profound mysteries, the throbbing pulse of the world and the essence of the earth. Most likely, in a few more decades. I should be able to completely fuse these types of profound mysteries. Linley didn't try to hide anything. Beirut couldn't help but sigh in praise. Gaining insights while fusing? You are quite intelligent, to not blindly and greedily advance rashly. I am doing this at the guidance of Mr. Leyland. Linley said. Right. Beirut let out a long sigh. It is now time for me to tell you a few things. Linley, in the past, weren't you puzzled about why the 4 supreme warrior clans disappeared all of a sudden? Linley's eyes lit up. The answer is simple. The 4 supreme warrior clans were taken by the experts of the infernal realm into the infernal realm. Beirut said with a laugh. More precisely speaking, your 4 supreme warrior clans should belong to the 4 divine beast clans of the infernal realm. Linley's heart shook. He said in astonishment, 4 divine beast clans. The 4 divine beast clans is the root of your 4 supreme warrior clans. Beirut sighed. Every single disciple, if they want to be purified and transformed, needs to return to the 4 divine beast clans and undergo the ancestral baptism. Purified and transformed. Ancestral baptism. Linley was even more puzzled now. Beirut nodded. Linley, haven't you discovered that generally speaking, you descendants of the 4 supreme warrior clans have a very low level of attunement to the laws? For example, your ancestors were barely able to even sense the laws. When they did gain some insights, they would progress very slowly. Linley nodded hurriedly. His own little brother Wharton was very slow in gaining insights. The rate of attuning to the laws is so low that it is even inferior to many powerful humans. How, then, could your clansmen be acclaimed as the 4 divine beast clans? The reason for slow training is because these people have never undergone the ancestral baptism. Beirut sighed. The ancestral baptism of the 4 divine beast clans is very mysterious. It isn't as simple as I once thought it was. The ancestral baptism of the 4 divine beast clans is extremely famous in the infernal realm. Beirut glanced at Linley. As Beirut saw it, Linley already had such astonishing training speed. Once he underwent the ancestral baptism, then he would definitely become a terrifying talent. Linley, do you want to return to the 4 divine beast clans and meet with the ancestors of your clan? A hint of amusement was in Beirut's eyes. Linley hesitated, not knowing what to say. After all, if he were to leave the Yulon plain, it would be very hard for him to return. In addition, Linley wanted to respect Delia's opinion. Men shouldn't be so indecisive. Beirut barked. What's more, this is just a Yulon continent. How can a talent like you stay within a single material plane? That boundless infernal realm where experts are as common as clouds is the place which truly suits you. Linley's heart shook. Boss, the infernal realm is really interesting. For example, Grandpa's metallic castle was purchased in the infernal realm. Bibi said hurriedly. Bibi, ever curious, was very eager to visit the higher plane of the infernal realm as well. The 4 divine beast clans resides within the Indigo prefecture of the blood-rich continent of the infernal realm. Beirut said. Whether you go or not is up to you. Linley immediately bowed. Yes, Lord Beirut. Bibi, let's go. Linley looked at Bibi. Oh. Bibi nodded. Looking at Bibi's expression, Linley let out a secret sigh. Bibi had grown up with him. The two shared the same ardent blood and love for challenges and danger. Linley knew that Bibi deeply desired to go to the infernal realm. But if Linley was to go to the infernal realm, he had to persuade Delia. Within Dragon Blood Castle, Delia glanced at the nearby Linley. She knew what Linley was thinking. In the past 3 days in particular, Linley would occasionally reveal a hint of desire and a hint of confusion in his eyes. Linley. Delia suddenly gritted her teeth and made her decision. Huh. Linley glanced at Delia by his side, puzzled. Delia looked at him and intentionally let out a low sigh. Linley, Don't you feel as though life in the Yulon continent is no longer exciting? Right. Linley's eyes instantly lit up. Delia, I have that feeling also. Do you think we should? Halfway through his words, Linley came to a halt. He saw the hint of laughter appear on Delia's face. Delia, thank you. Linley already understood what Delia meant. Delia was about to give him what he wanted. Actually, I'm already very satisfied with the 20 years of quiet life that we've had. Delia said softly. Delia said with a sigh, Linley, the Linley that I know is a person who constantly struggles and is filled with willpower. I like this you. In the Yulon continent, where nothing is a challenge to you, your willpower will slowly be ground flat. In addition, deep in my heart, I also want to live a slightly more exciting life as well. Also, I've already become a god. Delia looked at Linley. At the very least, I have excellent fleeing abilities. I won't become a burden to you. Linley laughed as he pulled Delia into his embrace. Delia, then let's roam the infernal realm together. Roam the infernal realm together. Delia also said softly. And me? I'm going with you. Bibi immediately hurried over and shouted loudly, I'm going to the infernal realm too, I'm going too. Linley and Delia exchanged a glance, then both began to laugh. 3 days later, one freezing, cold early morning in late autumn. Many people of Dragonblood Castle were gathered here in this training area. They had come to send Linley, Delia, and Bibi off. Linley looked at the people in front of him. They included Uncle Hillman, who had guided him since he was young, as well as his family members such as Wharton, Taylor, Sasha, Arnold, the 5 Barker brothers who had fought by his side, Zisler, Jen, Rebecca, and Lena, and his magical beast Haru, as well as his friend Desri. Everyone was gathered here. Big bro. Wharton's eyes were filled with an unwillingness to part from him. Wharton, I entrust everything here to you. Linley slapped Wharton on the shoulders. I trust that you can do it. If you encounter any problems, you can go to the Forest of Darkness and beg Lord Beirut for help. He will help you. I know. Wharton hurriedly nodded. Linley had also given that Earth-style demigod spark to Wharton. In the future, it would be up to Wharton to decide who to give the divine spark to. At the same time, Linley had also given the Earth-style god spark to Barker, who was already an Earth-style demigod. After Hanbrit's death, Linley had acquired a Wind-style god spark, which he gave to Haru. Master. Haru looked longingly at Linley. He was filled with gratitude towards Linley. It was Linley who had allowed him to become a demigod. And now, Linley was giving him a Wind-style divine god spark. Father. Taylor and Sasha both looked at Linley as well. Linley lovingly rubbed the heads of his son and daughter. Haha, perhaps 1 year in the future, I will return. Linley forced out a smile, then turned. Let's go. Linley, Delia, and Bibi flew out, disappearing into the northern skies. Wharton, Haru, Barker, and the others all couldn't help but reveal a hint of tears in their eyes. With this departure of Linley's from the Yulon continent, how long would it be before he would be able to return? Big bro. Wharton felt grateful towards his big brother from the bottom of his heart. It was Linley who had single-handedly raised the Dragonblood warrior clan to a flourishing level again. And now, Linley was leaving while allowing Wharton, Haru, and Barker to become full gods, and asking Beirut to take care of them as well. The Barak family's foundation was now unshakably firm. Yulon calendar, year 10,092. Late autumn. Linley led his wife, Delia, as well as Bibi out of the Yulon continent. They were headed to a higher plane, the infernal realm.